What is a supernatural event that happened in your life that just cannot be explained? Early into my now wife and I's relationship, I had a dream about her in childbirth, very vivid and long, like I spent days in the hospital with her and everything was in a strange twilight. When it came time to deliver, things went very wrong and she and baby ended up passing away. I woke up quite shook naturally but brushed it off. I am a nurse and have had to deal with traumatic OB situations before, and I chalked it up to me dealing with that stress through a dream. 6 years later and my wife is pregnant. I have forgotten the dream by now. I get a call late into the 3rd trimester while I am on shift. Wife is going to the ER for a bad BP. I get off my shift and go to meet her. As soon as I step into the room I remember my dream. It's the same damn room, which is extra spooky because the hospital we were at wasn't even built when I had the dream. This is last year, right when lockdown started. My wife is admitted. They want to wait a week to deliver if possible. She will be kept in a twilight state until that time. So it's me in this room eerily isolated as the world around us is frozen and my wife is incoherent mere feet away. Lingering for days in this room I brushed off my dream, trying to manage my anxiety and stress. Come showtime my wife gets ready to begin pushing and it's exactly the same scenario as my dream. Things start going poorly, but the doctor thinks delivery is still possible, but at this point I finally freak out into full panic, and demand a C-section for my wife. The doctor I can tell wants to argue but I think my outburst made her step back and reassess the situation and she made the call for emergency C-section. Took 10 minutes for me to get taken back and as I'm in the OR I see my baby come out lifeless. They do everything they can and manage to resuscitate her. In the meantime my wife is doing poorly, and they are scrambling to control her bleeding. I follow the baby out knowing there's really nothing I can do. Baby gets life flighted to another hospital. But before we go I see my wife stable and headed to the ICU. Both my wife and baby are critical but alive. Today they are both thriving and my baby is 16 months and just a tornado of energy. I don't know that they would be alive if not for that dream and it causing me to freak out and demand a change in plan. My buddy and I were playing tennis one night at some courts by my house. Lights usually went out at 11, but for whatever reason that night they went off at a weird time, like 10:43. Whatever, that was weird. We collected our stuff and started walking to my car about 500 feet from the courts. My buddy's mom pulls up right as we're getting to my car and goes, "Where the hell have you been? I called your cell and some guy was just laughing. It didn't sound like you." It was then my buddy realized he didn't have his phone on him. He told his mom to call his cell again and we could see it light up in the middle of the court we were playing on, by the net, but still definitely in between the single lines. Not at all where we kept the rest of our stuff. He goes and gets it and only has the one missed call from his mom. The one she just made. He asked if she called the right number and her call log showed 3 calls to his phone all that night. We can't explain why the cell was on the court or what happened with the calls or what happened with the lights. It was surreal. Woke up to a weird feeling, and saw an opaque silhouette of a little boy standing on the other side of the apartment facing me. I turned on my light and it was gone. When I turned my light off I saw it again, flipped the light back on and went over there to make sure there was nothing that could be causing a weird shadow etc. There was nothing there that could have created that specific shape and it was standing in the pathway between my couch and wall so it couldn't have been a shadow. I turned my light off again and it was there, flipped it back on and slept with the light on for the rest of the night. Couldn't sleep without the light on for days, lol. Went with my brother to see an old family property my mother had inherited in a really rural area. We were just looking about, it hadn't been lived in for decades. A bit of wind, a bit of a rainy day, and both me and my brother were inspecting the house until we started hearing a weird rhythmic knock coming from around the building. Just a knock at regular intervals, much like a clock sounds but a lot louder. We stepped out to look around, but the noise started sounding like it was getting further away from us, until it disappeared. We left shortly afterwards. A couple of days go by, and I stopped by my mother's. I asked her if she has any pictures of the original owner of the house, which was her grandfather, so, my great-grandfather. She pulled it out. Guess what? The man had a wooden leg as a result of a war injury. Told my mother all about it, and it was like she was remembering him. She says that's exactly how it sounded when he walked on the porch. Weird AF. Edit. It's possible it was a bird tapping on wood somewhere around, but as far as I know, birds that do this tend to tap in a very rapid fashion. In my story above, the knocks were about 2 seconds or so apart. Quite a bit different from how an animal usually behaves. I'm not into supernatural stuff, but damn, that was eerie. When I was a kid, about 10 to 12ish, I was carrying a load of laundry upstairs home alone while mom was out doing errands. We have this weird carpet runner over our hardwood stairs that's only really attached at the top of the flight but otherwise not fitted or secured to each individual stair. So naturally I step on an air bubble of carpet with my vision obscured by the laundry and fall backwards while bear hugging a bunch of blankets. I specifically remember thinking, well, guess I'm about to die, while almost airborne with just my big toe left on the carpet when I felt 2 hands, one on either side of my shoulder blades, give me a firm shove that launched me back up on the step and diagonally against the stair rail. I assumed mom somehow silently came back early without announcing herself and turned around to thank her while still clinging to the railing, but no one was there. I scurried upstairs to put my things down while calling her name and walked the house afterwards to check if any doors were unlocked or if her car was there. I finally resorted to calling her cell, where she told me she was hitting up a few more stores. It still feels like there's a presence on that stairwell, like someone's watching, but in a protective way rather than sinisterly. Working as night security for a small office at a sanitation plant. Building was a single entrance and you had to check in at the security station to get in or out. A worker shows up and checks in saying he needs to take care of a few things and grab some stuff, so I check in his ID and flip a few lights for him, then go back about my business. Fast forward a few hours and my shift is about to end. I still haven't seen the guy come back, so I go patrol the building to find him and literally can't find him anywhere. He's not in any of the areas. I turned lights on for him, no other lights are on, and he's not in any other rooms. I stop by security to see if we just missed each other and he's trying to leave, but nobody is there. I do a second patrol and still no signs. At this point I went to check cameras to see where he went, but he's not on a single camera except the one covering the entrance and security station. He turns down a hallway and never shows up on the next camera down said hall. At this point I logged it as an incident, and GTFO right as the relief shift showed up. Next day my boss calls me and says that worker had been on vacation out of state for several days, and wouldn't return for several more. Nobody could offer any explanation to what happened. Did he return? Yeah, he came back from vacation right on time and was pretty spooked since the boss had called to check on him and told him what happened. Couldn't offer any explanation still, and neither could anyone else. Well, when I was around 6 years old I was walking down the stairs, no one was behind me, and all of a sudden I remember getting chills, then feeling a faint hand on my shoulder before I got basically pushed down the stairs. I was alright, a few cuts and bruises, nothing serious, but I still remember the feeling of the invisible hand on my shoulder. It haunts me. When I was going to my family's home I got in a SUV going down the road. This was in Bangladesh at the time, and after taking the SUV the next 2 hours would be a highway going down a forest. I was sitting shotgun, and along the highway there was an old man walking down the highway. He was hitchhiking and the driver decided to pick him up. He insisted on sitting in my seat and obliged as he was an older man. About an hour down the drive our car collided with a bus and the shotgun seat was mangled up. We all got out and we looked around, but we couldn't find the old man that insisted on taking my seat anywhere. Stories like these aren't rare, but I didn't believe them. We all know the man sat in my seat and we all saw him, but he was nowhere to be found. Edit. He just vanished. No blood. He was wearing ethnic attire which isn't peculiar around that area. He didn't speak at all. And we didn't ask him anything either. He just said to drop him off at the market ahead, which would be in the town my house was in. One thing that was weird was that he spoke in an oldish Bengali, like old Bengali that we'd see in poetry from the 1800s. I didn't see it as peculiar cause he seemed like an ascetic. Second edit, I have pics of the collision if you guys were wondering. Third edit, when I said he didn't speak at all I meant during the ride. He didn't say anything other than where he wanted to go and insisting on my seat.